The first thing everyone noticed at my mother's funeral wasn't the flowers or the hymn or the pale light filtering through the church windows. It was the empty chair in the front row. My father's chair, the one reserved for the grieving husband. His absence sat heavier than the coffin itself. The whispers started even before the pastor began to speak. A few sympathetic murmurs at first, then the low buzz of outrage like hornets under the pews. 20 minutes later, as if the universe had a sick sense of humor, someone's phone buzzed. Then another, then mine. A notification from Instagram. My father's new story. There he was, smiling at an airport gate, sunglasses reflecting the runway, his arm draped around a woman half his age, lips puckered toward the camera. The caption read, "Finally living a little." I didn't cry. Couldn't. I just stared at the photo until my knuckles turned white around my phone. My mother's casket looked too small now, too fragile to hold all the betrayal that filled that room. The pastor stumbled through his words. My aunt gasped loud enough for everyone to hear. My father's best friend pretended to blow his nose. I sat still, tracing invisible numbers on my palm, timeline, motive, paperwork, because anger wasn't enough. Not for this. When the ceremony ended, the crowd parted like water. My mother's lawyer, Mr. Landers, approached quietly. A man who'd known her since college, eyes rimmed red but steady. He slipped a sealed envelope into my hand. "She asked me to give this to you," he said. "Only if he didn't show." His voice cracked on the word he. In the car, I tore it open. Inside was a single small key, the kind that fit a safe deposit box, and a sticky note with a bank's name scrawled in my mother's familiar handwriting. Beneath it, 4 words that felt like both a warning and a plea. "If you're scared, run." But I didn't run. I drove. Past the manicured lawns and cul-de-sacs of our neighborhood, past the HOA guard who pretends not to notice every scandal. The town looked normal. Families grilling, sprinklers hissing, someone walking a dog. But the world had tilted. My mother was gone, and my father was posting airport selfies with another woman. The bank was one of those sterile suburban branches with fake plants and fluorescent lights that buzz like flies. The teller led me to a small private room. When she unlocked the box, my hands trembled. Inside were 3 items, a USB drive, a prepaid cell phone, and a folded letter dated 2 weeks before my mother fell down the stairs. Her handwriting was firm, but I could see where her pen had pressed too hard, where fear had seeped through the ink. "Sweetheart," she wrote, "if you're reading this, your father already made his choice. Start with the doorbell cameras. Start with the insurance timestamps. And if he goes to the airport, follow the AirTag." I froze. AirTag? I pulled out my phone and opened Find My. A single gray dot blinked on the screen. Terminal C, Newark Airport. It was moving. Slowly. Then stopped near Gate 47. My pulse hammered in my ears. Before I could think, the prepaid phone in the box vibrated. One new voicemail. The caller ID said Mom. I nearly dropped it. The timestamp read 11:43 p.m., the night before she died. Her voice came through shaky, frightened, like she was hiding somewhere. "If anything happens to me," she whispered, "he changed the meds again. And the woman with him. She's not who you think. Please, baby. Check the attic box." The message cut off with a thud. My breath caught in my throat. Change the meds again? My father had been managing her prescriptions after her diagnosis, but she'd been getting better, or at least that's what he told me. I remembered him brushing off her dizzy spells, her sudden nausea, saying, "She's just tired." Grief does that. The AirTag dot blinked again. The plane's location icon turned blue, boarding complete. He was gone. Off to some tropical getaway with his mistress, while my mother's body was barely in the ground. I drove home on autopilot, headlights cutting through the dark like blades. The voicemail replayed in my head over and over. Change the meds again. Check the attic box. When I pulled into the driveway, everything looked normal. The same porch light, the same flag waving lazily. But inside, the house felt hollow, stripped of its heartbeat. My mother's favorite scarf still hung by the door. Her coffee mug sat half-cleaned in the sink. I climbed the attic ladder and shone my phone light into the shadows. The box she mentioned wasn't there, or maybe I didn't know what I was looking for. My father must have taken something. There were empty spaces, dust outlines where items once sat. My mother had hidden something up here, and he'd found it first. As I crouched among the insulation and old boxes, my phone buzzed again. Another Instagram notification. His account. Another photo. Him and the same woman holding cocktails in some neon-lit airport bar. Caption, "Welcome to Nashville. Nashville." I froze. The word from Mom's voicemail echoed like a thunderclap. She'd said, "The woman with him? She's not who you think." And then it hit me. My mother had lived in Nashville before she met my father. She had friends there, maybe even enemies. Whatever secret she'd uncovered, whatever she'd tried to hide in that attic box, he was flying straight into it. I opened her letter again, staring at those words. Start with the doorbell cameras. Start with the insurance timestamps. Something was wrong. Something bigger than an affair. My father wasn't just a coward skipping a funeral. He was covering something. I looked at his latest post one more time. The woman's mirrored sunglasses reflected a sign behind the bar, the attic. My blood went cold. My mother's final message came back in a whisper. Check the attic box. It wasn't a metaphor. It was a map, and whatever truth she'd buried up there, it wasn't staying buried anymore. By the time my plane landed in Nashville, the anger had hardened into something colder, something sharper. It wasn't just grief anymore, it was purpose. I didn't remember booking the ticket, didn't remember packing, didn't even remember crying. Just the hum of the jet engine and the picture of my father kissing another woman while my mother's coffin was being lowered into the ground. 3 hours later, I stood outside the airport with one carry-on bag and a note from my mother whispering through my mind, start with the cameras. Start with the timestamps. If he goes to the airport, follow the AirTag. The city buzzed with neon and noise, cowboy boots, laughter, live guitars, and the smell of whiskey spilling onto sidewalks. I checked my phone again. The AirTag signal was steady, somewhere along Broadway. My father was here, with her, the Mistress. Her social media handle was easy to find, A Wilder Nights. Her latest story had gone up 15 minutes ago, a boomerang video of her boots tapping on a bar stool, bright red neon glowing around them. In the reflection of the mirror behind her, I could see him, my father. My throat closed when I spotted the familiar shape of his hand, resting possessively on her leg. Even worse, his wedding ring flashed in the reflection, but it wasn't on his finger. It was hanging from her necklace. I checked into the cheapest motel within walking distance and opened the USB from the deposit box. 3 folders. One labeled Ring Front Door, another Kitchen Med Cabinet, and the last Insurance Policy PDF. My pulse raced. I clicked the first one. A grainy video loaded, the night before my mother fell. The camera caught my father walking through the kitchen, pausing near the medicine cabinet. He took a white bottle, shook it once, and slipped it into his pocket. Before leaving, he looked directly into the camera, like he was checking his reflection, and smiled. The second folder showed the insurance paperwork. Double indemnity. Payout doubled in case of accidental death. The signature date sent chills through me, 3 months ago, right after my mother's new diagnosis, something she'd never told me about. I sat there for a long time, the only sound the low hum of the mini fridge and my own heartbeat. When the prepaid phone buzzed, I almost didn't answer. "Is this her daughter?" a trembling voice whispered. "I live across the street from your parents. I saw him that night. Who is this?" I asked, gripping the phone tighter. She hesitated. He backed the car into the garage around midnight. Left it running for a long time. I thought he was fixing something. But then the next morning, the call broke off, no name. Just silence. I stared at the wall, piecing it together. Garage fumes, medication, timing. He didn't just skip her funeral. He killed her. And then he ran. My hands shook as I pulled up his public Venmo profile. He never cared about privacy, too arrogant to think anyone would look. His most recent payment stood out, $500 to Wilder Nights. The memo read just one word: ashes. Ashes. I felt my stomach turn. My father wasn't grieving. He was celebrating. As if on cue, my phone buzzed again, a text from him. "Stop being dramatic. Stay out of grown-up business." I stared at it until my vision blurred. Then I sent him a reply, no words. Just the screenshot from the Ring camera, the one showing him stealing my mother's medication, the typing. Bubble appeared, then disappeared. He didn't respond again. I knew then that he wasn't just guilty. He was scared. The AirTag pinged again, its signal drifting downtown. I zoomed in until the map centered on a single glowing dot, the Attic Bar, right in the heart of Nashville's nightlife. My breath caught. "Check the attic box," Mom's voicemail had said. It wasn't just a clue. It was a direction. The bar was a riot of noise when I walked in. Lights flickered over faces that blurred together. Tourists, drunks, dreamers. But she stood out instantly. The Mistress. Long dark hair, sunglasses even indoors, a whiskey glass balanced delicately in her hand. When she saw me, she didn't look surprised. She looked like she'd been waiting. "Hi," she said, lowering her sunglasses. Her voice was calm, steady. "You made good time," I froze. "You know who I am?" She smiled slightly and gestured to the empty seat across from her. "Sit down. There's something you should see." I didn't move. "Where's my father?" "Gone," she said. "He left 15 minutes ago. But he'll call. He always does when he panics." She reached into her purse and slid a manila folder across the table. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a private investigator's license, a stack of photographs, and a contract, signed by my mother. My heartbeat roared in my ears as I read. Client, redacted. Purpose: domestic investigation, suspected tampering, insurance fraud. Duration: 8 months. Primary contact: Elizabeth Wilder. The woman leaned back, her expression softening. "Your mom hired me. My name's Beth Wilder. I wasn't your father's mistress, I was his shadow." I stared at her, numb. The room tilted slightly as her words sank in. "You're lying," Beth shook her head. "No," she knew he was going to kill her. She just didn't know when. She wanted proof, enough to make sure he'd never get $1 from her death. I looked down at the photos again. My father at a pharmacy. My father meeting a man in a parking garage. My father at the insurance office. Every image was time-stamped, dated, filed. Beth's voice dropped low. "She gave me that AirTag herself. It's in his luggage. The moment he left for Nashville, I knew he'd try to bury something here. Probably her real insurance documents or evidence she collected. He thought burning them would make it all go away." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. The first drops of rain began tapping on the windows like a warning. "What now?" I whispered. Beth lifted her glass and said, "Now we catch him before he catches on." The phone on the table buzzed, an incoming call from Dad. Beth's eyes locked with mine. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded, but before I could answer, his name vanished from the screen, replaced by a text that made my blood run cold. "You shouldn't have come here." Beth exhaled slowly. "He knows." And before I could ask how, she said the words that shattered the last piece of my reality. "Your mom didn't die by accident. She knew he'd kill her, and she hired me to catch him." Beth Wilder wasn't my father's mistress. She was my mother's final line of defense. Sitting in her Nashville office, surrounded by manila folders and blinking monitors, the truth unfolded like a bomb detonating in slow motion. Her affair posts had been bait, crafted perfectly to make my father arrogant, reckless, and sloppy. Each selfie, each tagged location, every piece of his public humiliation had been a calculated move. "It worked," Beth said, tapping her laptop. "He sped up the plan." Her tone was calm, clinical, like a surgeon dissecting a monster. I stared at the screen, watching grainy dashcam footage from 2 weeks before my mother's death. My father sat in a parked car, meeting a broker in a dimly lit garage. "How fast do these policies pay out after an accident?" he asked, voice casual as he flipped through papers. The broker said something about verification, timelines, legal clauses. My father smirked. "Good. She won't be around long enough to contest it." The words hit me like a knife twisting under my ribs. Beth paused the footage. "That's what your mother needed you to see. She hired me to build the case, but we needed him to act. Once he thought he was free, he'd expose himself." She reached into her file drawer and pulled out a printed document. "This is why you were supposed to come to Nashville." It was titled Will Addendum.pdf, dated 6 months earlier, on my mother's birthday. The legal jargon blurred until Beth translated. "If adultery or malfeasance is proven beyond reasonable doubt, all assets bypass the spouse. Everything goes to you and to the women's shelter your mom funded." My mother's handwriting scrawled at the bottom of the page, "He won't stop until he's broke or caught." I couldn't breathe. So all this was her trap, Beth finished. But we need one final piece, his confession. Tonight. The idea was madness. The kind of plan that only made sense when you'd lost everything and had nothing left to fear. We'd call him using the prepaid phone that once belonged to my mother. Mirror play her final voicemail, her terrified words about the medication. Under Tennessee's one-party consent law, recording the call would be legal. Once he reacted, we'd send the evidence to the district attorney and to Mom's lawyer, Mr. Landers. Beth's office light flickered as thunder rolled outside. We need to corner him before he leaves the state. If he gets home, he'll clean everything. Emails, documents, bank accounts. She grabbed her jacket, keys jingling. The attic bar is close to the airport. He'll go there first. He always does when he panics. It's his hideout. At 10:07 p.m., we were on the rooftop of the attic. Rain slicked the neon sign. The city pulsed below. My hands trembled as I held the prepaid phone, the last link to my mother's voice. Beth connected it to the Bluetooth speaker in her car and nodded. When he answers, play it immediately. Let her speak first. The phone rang twice. Then his voice, cold, impatient, familiar. What do you want? I hit play. Mom's voice filled the air like a ghost carried on the storm. If anything happens to me, he changed the meds again. Silence. A silence that swallowed the city. Then my father's breath crackled through the line. Who is this? Beth didn't blink. He's lying, she mouthed. She texted a photo to his number, the Ring camera still of him pocketing the white pill bottle. Another pause. Then a low hiss. You tell anyone, you lose everything. I found my voice. Already sent to counsel, I said. Check your email. For a heartbeat, there was only static. Then the line went dead. Beth checked her tracker app. The AirTag signal, the one hidden in his luggage, began moving fast, speeding along the map toward Nashville International Airport. He's running, she said. Time to finish this. We reached the terminal 6 minutes before him. The airport was fluorescent bright, alive with the sound of suitcase wheels and bad decisions. My pulse raced as I spotted him entering through the sliding doors, head down, baseball cap low. He looked older, meaner, smaller than I remembered. I stepped forward before I could think. Say it, I said, loud enough for the crowd to turn. Say what you did to her. He froze mid-step, face twitching between rage and shock. You shouldn't be here. She trusted you, I said. She thought love was enough to save her. His eyes narrowed, calculating. Then softly, he said, Your mother wanted to go. She begged me to help. The air went still. A TSA agent looked up from the scanner. Beth raised her phone, recording everything. You're lying, I said, my voice breaking. We have proof. Videos, emails, your broker. He stepped closer, the smell of aftershave and arrogance filling the space between us. You think you'll get a dime after what your mother did to you? What did she do to me? I demanded. He smiled, vicious and bright, the kind of smile that had fooled everyone but her. She never told you who I am. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? He leaned in, voice a low whisper that still managed to cut through the noise of the terminal. I'm not your father. The words detonated in my chest, echoing through the tiled walls, loud enough for the people in line to hear. Someone gasped. The TSA agent stepped forward, uncertain. Beth's camera kept rolling, her knuckles white around the phone. I stared at him, the man I'd spent my whole life trying to please, trying to understand. You're lying, I said, but even I didn't believe it. He straightened, smoothed his jacket, and for the first time in my life, looked proud of what he'd done. Ask your mother's lawyer, he said. She made sure the truth would find you eventually. You were just too blind to see it. Then he turned toward the gate, scanning for exits, for escape routes, for a life he could still control. But Beth moved faster, stepping in front of him. This is over, Richard, she said. Every recording, every payment, every policy already sent to the DA. He froze, jaw tightening, eyes darting toward security guards closing in. For a split second, I saw panic flash through him, then hate, then something else, fear. He looked back at me once more and said quietly, You think you're safe now? You have no idea who your mother really was. And before I could respond, before the officers reached him, he raised his voice, filling the terminal with one final venomous truth. I'm not your father, the crowd gasped. Cameras turned. The world went white with flashes. And somewhere in the chaos, I realized this wasn't the ending of my mother's story. It was the beginning of mine. The world around me blurred into silence like I was trapped underwater, suspended between disbelief and dread. His words, "I'm not your father," echoed again and again, drowning out the airport chaos. I couldn't even feel my heartbeat anymore. Everything felt distant, slow, unreal. When the officers finally pulled him aside to ask a few questions, Beth took my arm and steered me into a side hallway where flickering security screens washed us in pale blue light. "He wasn't bluffing," she said quietly. "Your mom told me once that if he ever cornered you with that truth, it would mean he was desperate. That's why we need to go back to the house. The attic box, she said that's where everything starts and ends." Those words, starts and ends, sat heavy in my chest. Within the hour, we'd boarded the red-eye back to New Jersey. The plane hummed with the soft snores of sleeping passengers, but I couldn't close my eyes. My reflection in the cabin window looked like a stranger's. If he wasn't my father, then who was? And why did my mother hide it from me my entire life? Beth sat across the aisle, scrolling through emails, her face calm, almost too calm. "Your mom trusted me for a reason," she said without looking up. "No matter what we find, remember that." By sunrise, we were back in the neighborhood where every fence was white and every secret was buried under manicured lawns. The house was still, the kind of stillness that feels wrong after death. I climbed the pull-down attic ladder slowly, each creak echoing like a confession. The air up there was stale and heavy, thick with dust and the faint scent of lavender, my mother's favorite candle. Morning light filtered through a tiny vent, slicing the darkness into thin gold ribbons, and then I saw it. The box. It sat beneath a tangle of holiday decorations and old baby clothes, exactly where Mom's voicemail had said it would be. My hands trembled as I pulled it into the light. Inside were relics of a life I thought I understood. A birth certificate listing only my mother's last name, a sealed adoption file stamped confidential, and a Polaroid, my mother and Beth much younger, laughing on a beach I didn't recognize. There was also a letter sealed with wax and a small USB drive labeled in my mother's handwriting, "Do not watch until he runs." I plugged the drive into my laptop. The video flickered to life. My mother appeared on screen, no makeup, wearing one of Dad's old sweaters, her hands folded nervously. Her eyes, though tired, were steady. "Honey," she began softly, "if you're watching this, then he ran or he's cornered you with something cruel. Don't let him twist it. Yes, I had you alone. No, he didn't adopt you. He refused. He wanted an heir from someone else, someone who'd make him look perfect. When I got sick, he saw numbers, not years. That's when I called Beth. She saved my life once, years before you were born. If she's with you now, trust her. She's the only one who knows the whole story." My eyes filled before I realized I was crying. I opened the wax-sealed letter next, my hands shaking so hard I nearly tore it. It was addressed to me, and to Beth. "Daughter," it began, "I never told you Beth is family. She's your half-sister. I met her mother before I married him. Life was messy then, and love even messier. But Beth is blood. She was born of my mistake, and you were born of my hope. If you're reading this together, it means the two halves of my life have finally found each other." The attic spun. My knees gave out, and I sat on the floor, the letter trembling in my hands. Half-sister. All this time, the woman I'd accused of destroying my family was the only family I had left. Downstairs, the floorboards creaked. A door opened. My heart jumped to my throat. "Hello?" His voice, calm, slow, syrup-thick and venomous. "We need to talk, sweetheart." No lawyers this time. I grabbed my phone, texting Beth in a blur. "He's here." Her reply came instantly. "Cops en route." "Stall him!" I forced myself to stand, shoving the papers back into the box. His footsteps grew louder, measured, confident. The ladder groaned as he climbed the first few rungs. "Your mother was clever," he said, his tone almost admiring, "but not clever enough." "Say it," I said, lifting my phone and aiming the camera at him. "Say what you did." "About the meds," he smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Accidents happen." Outside, faint but growing, came the wail of sirens. Blue lights flickered through the attic vent, splashing across his face. He didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket, slowly, deliberately. I tensed, half expecting a weapon. But what he pulled out was worse in its own quiet way. A passport, a roll of cash, and a small black thumb drive. "Last chance," he said softly. "Come with me, or watch me burn your life down." "I already sent it," I whispered. "To the DA, to Mom's lawyer, to the insurance company, everything." For the first time, his expression cracked. Just slightly, but enough. Then came the thunder of boots downstairs. "Police!" He froze, eyes darting between the ladder and the window. For one suspended heartbeat, we just stared at each other. In his gaze, I saw every lie he'd ever told, every cruel smirk at the dinner table, every time he'd made my mother shrink into herself. There was no love there, only the hatred of a man who'd finally lost control. He let go of the ladder. He fell back, hitting the floor with a thud before scrambling to his feet. The officers shouted from below, ordering him to stop, but he didn't. He ran, not toward the front door or the backyard, but toward the garage. Through the open attic hatch, I heard the engine roar to life. The smell of gasoline filled the air. Beth's car screeched into the driveway as I climbed down, yelling for the cops. But it was too late. Through the small garage window, I saw him in the driver's seat, door locked, music blaring, exhaust flooding the space. He reached over and pressed something on the dashboard, Mom's old car radio, and hit play. Her favorite song filled the air, muffled and tragic. That was his idea of justice, his final manipulation, and all I could do was watch as the man who destroyed my mother chose to destroy himself the same way he'd lived, by suffocating everyone around him. The sound of shattering glass still lives somewhere in my chest. The cops broke the driver's side window before the fumes could finish what he started. They pulled him out coughing, red-faced, furious that the world wouldn't let him script his own ending. His hands shook as they cuffed him, his eyes wild and unfocused. The same man who had once commanded every room he walked into now looked small, pathetic, just another coward who mistook control for love. Beth and I stood at the edge of the driveway, the blue and red lights spinning across our faces like a broken carousel. For the first time in months, I felt no fear, no confusion, only a deep, bone-level exhaustion. The fight was over, or at least I thought it was. At the police station, the air smelled of disinfectant and cheap coffee. A detective with tired eyes and a steady voice placed a thick folder on the table between us. "We went through your mother's house," she said gently, her gaze flicking between me and Beth. "You did good work collecting evidence. Now it's our job to make sure he never gets out." Inside the folder were the pieces of our lives that had become weapons. Ring camera stills, insurance records, bank transfers, Venmo receipts, even a printout of his Instagram story from the day of the funeral. The detective flipped a few pages, tapping her pen against one. "Every breadcrumb leads back to intent," she said. "That's what the DA needs, intent." Across the hall, I could see him through the one-way glass, head bowed, jaw clenched, pretending to be unbothered. The DA entered with a laptop and an offer. "If you confess on video," she said, "we'll consider leniency." He smirked, leaned back, and stared straight into the lens like it was a mirror. "I never touched her," he said smoothly. "She fell. People die. Accidents happen." His arrogance made my stomach twist. Beth stood beside the DA, calm as ever. Without a word, she pulled a final USB drive from her coat pocket and slid it across the table. "Then explain this," she said. The video on the screen flickered to life. My mother's kitchen, 3 nights before she died. He appeared, same shirt, same calm face. He picked up a white pill bottle, emptied a few tablets onto the counter, and crushed them with the butt of a knife. He poured the powder into her mug of tea, then paused to adjust his reflection in the microwave door. The recording caught it all. His hand, his face, his smirk as he rehearsed his look of shock. The color drained from his cheeks. His lips trembled before the rage returned. "You don't understand," he shouted, voice cracking. "She was going to cut me out. She changed the will." The detective didn't flinch. "That's called motive," she said flatly. By the time they led him away in handcuffs, I couldn't tell if the tremor in my hands was from adrenaline or heartbreak. Beth placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's over," she whispered. But it didn't feel over. Not yet. A week later, I sat in the front row of the courtroom as the judge read my mother's will and addendum aloud. The words felt like a benediction and a battle cry all at once. "Infidelity and malfeasance proven," the judge declared. All assets shall bypass the spouse and transfer to the designated heir and charitable foundation. My name echoed through the room, followed by the women's shelter my mother had dedicated her life to supporting. The gavel fell, sharp and final. The house, the insurance payout, the accounts, everything he'd killed for, gone. Outside, reporters shouted questions, but I didn't stop. I walked past the flashing cameras, past the courthouse steps, until I reached the car where Beth waited. The air smelled like rain again. "You ready to go home?" she asked. "Home," I repeated softly. The word felt foreign, but I nodded. Later that night, after everything settled, Beth and I sat in the living room surrounded by boxes. Mom's things, our things, all the ghosts of what we'd lost. We opened one last file together, marked in my mother's handwriting for my girls. Inside was a video file. We clicked play, the screen filled with her face. Her hair was wrapped in a scarf, her eyes tired but kind. "If I did one last good thing," she said, her voice trembling but certain, "it was teaching you both how to finish a story, not with hate. With proof. The truth will always find its way home." The video ended with her smile, the same one that used to make me believe nothing bad could happen in our house. The screen went black. Neither of us spoke for a while. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the distant chirp of a neighbor's sprinkler. Then Beth reached over and took my hand. "Family," she said softly. "Yours if you want it." I nodded, the tears finally coming. "I do." Outside, the cul-de-sac kids were drawing chalk hearts on the sidewalk. The world had gone on spinning, even after everything. I stepped out onto the porch, barefoot, breathing in the smell of wet pavement. The HOA guard who used to avoid eye contact raised a hand in silent acknowledgement as he drove past. For the first time since the funeral, the street felt like it could breathe again. My father will spend the rest of his life telling anyone who listens that I ruined him. Maybe he's right. But I didn't destroy him. He destroyed himself the moment he chose a boarding pass over a burial, greed over grief. I didn't get him arrested. He handed himself over one lie at a time until the truth finally caught up. And that's what happened that night. The night he skipped my mother's funeral to fly off with his mistress, we didn't chase him, we caught him. We didn't expose him for revenge. We did it for her. Because in the end, the story wasn't about hate or death or even betrayal. It was about two women, one living, one gone, refusing to let a man rewrite their ending. Mom's last will had one more line Beth and I hadn't noticed before. It was written in smaller print, almost like a secret just for us. "Take the money and buy the house on the corner with the swing. Fill it with laughter. And every year on my birthday, leave the porch light on. So no one in this family ever walks into the dark alone again, and that's exactly what we did.